Today we're going to talk about how you can follow up effectively after Easter services. Are you ready? Because it's time.
You're listening to the Church Digital Sidekick Podcast, part of the TCD Podcast Network.
Hey heroes, my name is Tom Pounder and this is the Church Digital Sidekick Podcast. This is the podcast where I bring on ministry leaders and we talk about how you can do ministry more effectively in this very digital and online world. And today I have two guests with me. This is from a Twitter space that we did a little bit ago, but these two guests are friends of mine, and they're MacDonald and Jeanette Yates. These are church comm leaders who are just amazing people, and they have amazing insights on church communications and more particular about following up. I've invited Mark and Jeanette on because they've been in the church communications world for a really long time, and they're really great about strategizing and encouraging churches on how to do church communications more effective. And today we talk about following up from Easter. Easter is a great day. It's a huge celebration. Lots of people come to Easter, some for the very first time. And that is why following up after an event like Easter is so important. Because after all, if you capture information and you're just like, oh, these people came, and just said they came and track the number, but then don't encourage them or follow up with them in some way, we're missing a huge opportunity to help impact the kingdom of heaven. We're missing a huge opportunity for helping people discover who God is, not just on Christmas and Easter, but all throughout the year and the rest of their lives. So Mark and Jeanette are on with me, and we discussed this. This is a little bit longer podcast than I normally do because we spent a while talking about Easter and the effective follow-up strategies, but I hope you enjoy this podcast. So without any further ado, let's get in an interview with Mark and Jeanette talking about effective follow-up from Easter services. With me today is MacDonald and Jeanette Yates. They are two friends of mine, and again, I've met them both online, and they both live in Florida, but I've still never met them in person.
It's true.
It's true.
And perhaps that's because you haven't sent me your address yet.
That's true. That is true.
Why don't you just tell it right now?
Yeah. It is 26. Oh, wait a second. No, I should do, since it's April Fool's Day, I should do a fake address. I should send everyone to Jeanette's house. Well, I don't even know Jeanette's address. So
exactly.
Isn't it Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington?
Yeah, 1600.
I was trying to think of another famous address that wasn't that, but I could like 227. What was the name of that street?
Oh,
I know the show, but I don't remember the street.
Okay,
right,
you all.
Well, there's 123 Sesame Street. That's where...
There we go.
Something everybody knows.
That's right.
Okay, well, as we get into this, why don't you guys, introduce yourselves? We've been kind of beating around the bush a little bit about it, but Mark, why don't you introduce yourself, and then Jeanette, after he's done, you can introduce yourself about what you guys do and how you guys got started in that.
Oh, wow. So I can't believe I get to do what I get to do. And I think that, so I just came back from breakfast with a really good friend who we just talked about this, about how, when we become believers, I believe that we're ordained into an incredible opportunity to be able to share the love of Christ with as many people as possible. And guess what I get to do? Originally I am Canadian, and I clawed my way to the top of one of Eastern Canada's largest ad agencies as senior creative director. And the whole time that I was trying to make it to the top, I just kept thinking, so why doesn't the church know this? And so my wife and two boys and myself, we moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 21 years ago, and set up an agency for churches and to really help them communicate better, but ultimately so that our churches can be known for something that's relevant and needed, so that we can just get our community to actually listen again to our churches. So I get to do that on a regular basis, and I'm also the executive director for Center for Church Communication, and we influence about 10,000 churches across the country.
That's awesome. That's great. Jeanette.
Mark is so amazing, isn't he?
He is.
He's got great stories. And he only mentioned like one thimbleful of his experience and expertise.
Right.
But anyway, I am Jeanette, and let's see, I got started in church communications probably more than 8 years ago, 9, 10 years ago, maybe. And I just was basically like filling in for somebody, and I was writing bulletin articles, and that was about it. And by the time I realized I was working there full time, I was doing social media, website, email, um, all kinds of communication, internal, external, graphic design, all of that. And I learned everything I learned by going to the internet and typing in, what is this and how do I do it?
Yeah.
And so I definitely credit um, Church Marketing Sucks with introducing me to the likes of um, the, you know, Brady Shearer and all those people who kind of taught me and walked me through like what exactly was church communications and how it was more than just an administrative position, but it was a ministry and a way to serve the kingdom. So
Yeah.
anyway, I did that for a few years, and then gradually found my way to now where I work for a company that works with churches. I am the community manager for Texan Church, and spend a lot of time on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter hanging out with church communicators and helping them feel known, noticed, and loved.
And
Yes.
anybody who is not following Jeanette on social media needs to follow her, because she is the biggest motivator and encourager on the entire internet.
Yeah.
I am very excited for other people and what's going on in their lives. And I really feel like that giving people encouragement in the form of kind words or funny gifts is kind of, my spiritual gift is gifts.
You.
I wonder, are there spiritual gifts now?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are.
The gifts is, it really is it's a spiritual gift. I mean, to be able to share those strategically and great, I mean, you got to be good at that, and Jeanette's really good at that.
I think that there should be a book called the best spiritual gifts.
Yes.
Let's
or
work
or
on it, Mark. Let's work on it.
I
or
think
or
so. Yes.
or Mark, you can write a book, Be Known for Gifts. There you go. Um, okay, so we could talk about gifts for a really long time, but today we're actually talking about Easter, and we're talking about Easter follow up, because here's the deal. A lot of churches do a lot of good stuff for Easter, but if you do all the good stuff leading up to Easter and even on Easter Sunday, but if you don't have a follow up plan, I think a lot of what you do is for naught, and it's wasted stuff that you've done, because follow up is where the key is. So that's why I got Mark on. I've got Jeanette on, because when I think about follow up, I think Jeanette's great about this. Mark's great about this, about the communication stuff. And so we've talked about these before. I talked to them separately about these, but together as a group, I just figured we could go back and forth and share different insights, different learnings, different tips that you've seen to be effective over the years. So whoever wants to start, whether it's Jeanette or Mark, we'll just kind of go back and forth and share and kind of debrief and discuss it as we go about. But what have you guys seen to be effective in your experience?
Mark, I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. I think that the and maybe this is going to be a little bit of a soapbox, but I don't know whether everyone has realizes it or not, but churches love to change the message all the time. And I think that we need to figure out, and I know that this is my big mantra, and I did write the book called Be Known for Something, and it really is about concentrating on one message long enough so that you become known for it. And if it's the right message, then people will actually choose you and want to choose you, say, after Easter.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've oftentimes found is that in a lot of churches, it seems like Easter is an incredibly different service, an incredibly different experience than what you would have before Easter. I get to travel and do mystery visits in churches and things like that. And I've stopped actually visiting churches at Easter time or at Christmas time or any special time because their service, and I hate to say this, but it's so much better on those weeks. So then you say, "We're so glad that you're here at Easter." And you've experienced the biggest explosion of lights and haze that you've ever seen in your entire life, and so we want you to come back, and then you come back, and it's lackluster, like
And
everyone's
the student pastor's preaching. That's it.
yes, because everyone is totally exhausted afterwards. And I think that what we need to figure out is how do we create something that's the same before Easter, during Easter, and then continuing it after Easter. So I think that my biggest thing is, because it might be a little too late now to go to your pastor and say we need to tone this down, but what we need to do is we need to make sure that the expectation is not going to be so huge and the bar raised so high that you'll never be able to have the people come back and like what they just experienced at Easter. And I think that I mean, by raising the bar every year to do more and more stuff at Easter, I think that you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because you can't sustain it afterwards. And I know that that really didn't answer your question, Tom, but by now you should know that I don't always answer your questions.
That's great. But we do want to hit on this a little bit because I do think what you present on Easter really needs to be consistent with who you are, as a church. And if you're not certain things, that if you try to do church so differently on Easter than you do during the rest of the week, you're right. You're going to disappoint a lot of people, and they're going to have false expectations of what your church is actually like. So I would think what I see in that is, you want your Easter services to be consistent, and you want your Easter services to really display just, again, the culture that your church is all about.
Oh, for sure. And the thing is that a lot of people who set foot in the church for the very first time it will happen, during either Christmas or Easter, and when they arrive, um, the churches that know who they are and know what they're all about, and the ones that communicate it effectively during their Easter service, it's so much easier for you to pivot towards, we would love for you to come back so that you can experience and then be able to fill in the blanks of what they'll be able to experience at the church.
Yep.
It's interesting that you brought that up, Mark, because in some of the Facebook groups that I manage, we've been kind of talking about, like, what is your plan for Easter and what is your plan for, follow up. We've been having these conversations, and almost everybody, there's a few people that are, doing the brass band or the string quartet or it's the
Yeah,
handbells and the pageant and all that. There's a couple of those, but for the most part, people are saying our Easter Sunday service is going to be just like every other service.
that's awesome.
We're just doing the stuff that we normally do. One person talked about how they normally, like, some of them are adding that sunrise service, but it's, again, just going to be a service that's the same as their other services at sunrise. It's not anything different as far as the structure of it or the music or anything like that. And then, I had one person in my Facebook group say that, every year they do this huge, like, breakfast, garden party thing for Easter Sunday, and it's, it's catered and and all this stuff. And he said that this year what they're doing is they're just asking their members to bring muffins that they bought from the store as part, like just everybody bring your own muffin.
Yeah.
And we are still going to gather and fellowship with each other, but we're not doing this big overstated thing. And so I think there is this, and I think part of it is, yes, part of it is what you're talking about, Mark, is like people, churches need to be consistent and want to be, but I think it's also, um, everybody's tired.
Yeah.
We've been on high alert for 2 years now, 2.5 years, and high stress. And so it used to be that like Easter was going to be that big stressful thing. And then we kind of relax after. Well, now it's like, no, we're already maxed out already.
Yep.
Like we don't need to add anything to make it that way. So I think this idea of having that, understated or, not all the bells and whistles for Easter, the most important thing is to connect with your church family, and then anybody who joins in that Sunday, like you said, sometimes for the first time, where they can come in and not feel like they're interrupting a play.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm sorry, did I walk on stage?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
Well, go ahead, Mark.
Well, it's so funny because um, one of the things that I also do for churches, I do focus groups and I talk to individual demographics of each of the churches that I'm working with, and I always ask, can you also get an unchurched group, people who are not associated with any church in the area? They might have attended your service in the past, but have them sit down in a room, and I find it very challenging because they all think I'm going to talk about the church or try to win them to the Lord or whatever. But what I've found is that people who are in the community who are totally unchurched, or people who don't really associate themselves with church, which is about 2/3 of all of our communities. So we have a huge opportunity when somebody walks through the doors. They all think that they're going to get struck by lightning, and when they leave, they're somewhat surprised. I didn't get struck by lightning, but I felt something that I haven't ever felt in another live venue. And I think that what we need to do is we need to be very, very sensitive of that. And in the same sense of what we were just talking about, we need to give voice to what they experienced, and be able to have them understand when somebody says, "So I hear you went to church on Sunday. Woo! Like, are you religious now?" That they need to be able to use some words to be able to describe what they experienced. And I think that in the communication world, I think that we need to make sure we're giving them those words so that they know what they just experienced.
Mm.
Yeah, I like that because again, when I'm looking at like the Easter service, one of the things I thought is like, how are we casting vision about what our church is actually about? Because I think a lot of people who are coming into church for the very first time are wondering, well, what is this church all about? Oh, it's just they have preconceived notions about what church is. This is your opportunity to cast vision to say, this is what our church does. This is what we're about. And this is how. Like I even thought, like, what could we do a 1 minute video or 90-second video that we show during mid-service about what our church is all about? Because again, it's all part of the communication process. You're trying to break down walls. You're trying to get them to say, wow, this church is different than something I've ever experienced before.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that what you're talking about, oftentimes when we think about follow up for Easter, we quickly go to, how many emails do we send somebody, or how many text messages that we have to send somebody. But ultimately, what we need to do is have them understand what they just experienced, and that it can happen again. You can come back and experience this again. And the more you can know who you are before Easter, and then when they've experienced it at Easter, you can promise, the same thing afterwards, or the same benefit. This happens every week of the year, and we would love for you to participate. And the joy of COVID, I can't believe I just said that and all in the sentence, but the joy of COVID is that everyone expects that there's also a way to do this online. So if you can't come back next week, or if you can't come back on a regular basis, you might be visiting, you can still experience our church online.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty here about this. And you talked about how many emails, how many text messages. What should you do? Like, what are some things that you guys have found to be successful here? That will not will yeah just continue this conversation on with people and get them to come back to church and hopefully discover who God is in their life.
Yeah. So since you mentioned something, since you mentioned texts and emails, I'll chime in here. Um, yeah. So yes, I do work for Text in Church, which is a software company that helps you send texts and emails to your guests and your members. I do agree with Mark, and I think anybody I work with would say the same thing, that there is no magic number of
Yeah.
emails or texts that you can send to get somebody to come back. Um, what you want to do with whatever follow-up process you come up with is you want to start the conversation during that service, right? Start
Yeah.
that, the question asking in their minds, like, what am I experiencing? What am I, is this the way it is all the time? They're asking these questions. Your follow-up process needs to answer those questions
Mhm.
that they're having. And like Mark said, give them the language to be able to express that. So, I think that's what the follow-up process does. And, I think whether it's Easter Sunday or really any Sunday, it's got to be a consistent follow up. It's got to be a sufficient follow up, and you've got to use relevant methods to do it. So, we can talk a little bit more about that. But I think, that's another thing to think about is one gift that they get to take home on Easter Sunday, or one card mailed to them, or one email, or even one or two texts is not sufficient.
Yeah.
That's so good, Jeanette. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of text in church. I mean, it's like well, I better say, just to keep peace, one of the best
Yeah.
software that's out there, and they certainly are the best because they employ Jeanette. Um,
Thanks, Mark.
but the thing is that what you really have to is kind of like, even if we were talking about social media, do what it takes to get them to follow along. So, like, oftentimes, I'm just amazed at how many times in a church service people are like, if you're visiting today, fill out all of this information for us on the connect card and put it in the offering plate. Like, you never see everyone jumping for it. It's like, oh man, I would love to do that. Like, there, number one, people need to know what happens when
Right.
you give some information. And number two, give them a reason to, like find out what they might want. Like, maybe integrate with your pastor a way for him to talk about a book that has just changed his perspective on the resurrection. And then for him to say, in fact, this book, I don't even know whether, like, it's usually sold out everywhere, but if you guys wanted to text us right now, we will mail you one this week. And then
Oh,
all of
so
a
good.
sudden, it's like you've increased the desire to want to get something. And then I know a lot of churches would go, oh my goodness, do you know how much that would cost in mail? Well, the thing is, there is a cost for them to give you their personal information. And we've got to figure out what is the cost, and are we going to actually give them something in return for that personal information? And I find that churches just drop the ball.
Yeah. And I also don't think it even needs to be, like you said, you need to let people know what's going to happen when they give you their information. And it does not have to, something like a book or a devotional or something would be great, but it doesn't. I mean, people will give their private information, their cell phone number, to the smoothie store to get 10% off a smoothie.
Yes.
It doesn't have to. they know they're going to get 10% off a smoothie, they're going to give them that number. That's
Yeah.
it. It's not that they're holding on to it so tightly. They just need to know what to expect. And it's something they want, to your point, Mark, is like, yeah, I want my 10% off my smoothie.
Maybe we could have that they don't have to give offerings for the next 2 weeks. If you, as soon as you said 10%, like we immediately went to the tithes. It's like, I
Yes.
Yeah.
think in scripture it talks about how if we give our email or our phone number to the church, we don't have to tithe for a couple of weeks.
Yes. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
it's right there in
I,
Deuteronomy.
I love
Yes.
I love the idea of this incentivizing it, because again, your information is valuable, and you only give it out when you feel like you're going to benefit from it in some way. And so again, we talk about our church. Hey, text us this, do your digital connection card, and we'll get you information about the church. Well, that's probably not good enough for people to do it, because they can just get the information in the bulletin or whatever else there is out there.
Well,
But
oftentimes the thing that we get back, or the thing that we hear, give us all of your information so it helps us, and then it becomes more about the church than it does about the benefit of the person who's giving up something. And so the cost, like it, that's why the smoothie shop says you get 10% off if you give us your information, and then totally respect that information, like that. You just treat it so preciously, because if you knew how many times I type in stop moments afterwards,
yes.
because I wanted the 10% off. I was just in Chicago last week, and I sat down and they said, well, we no longer have menus. You can just scan this QR code. Well, when I went to the QR code, it required me to put all the personal information in. And I'm thinking, just to see a menu? Are you
Yes.
kidding me? And then at the bottom, it said the magic word. It says, and we'll give you 10% off your first meal. And then I thought, okay, I'll do this. So I gave them all their information. But over the next 2 days, I got bombarded with they wanted to get me to come back, and it's like, stop, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get someone back after they've left you.
Well, and I think, you bring up a good point, and I actually talked about this in another podcast recently, about how, actually, was it yours, Tom? I don't remember.
No, it could have been yours.
No, yeah, it might have been the church juice one, but yes, we have to be better than the smoothie shop or the restaurant, right?
Hmm.
People know, yeah, I'm going to get this 10% off, and I'm just going to text stop later. They text stop not because of the fact that they're getting more texts than they want. They're texting stop because they're getting more texts than they want that don't give them anything.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're engaging them in conversation, if you're connecting with them on a personal level, that's not spam. If you're just going, come to our church, come on Sunday. We look forward to seeing you on Sunday. We hope to see you Sunday. Oh, we missed you on Sunday. That's not going to cut it. That's just going to make people want to run away and text the word stop. But if you're
Yeah. And,
inviting, yeah.
Jeanette, don't you find that the church doesn't really have a roadmap oftentimes, as to what they're going to do with that personal information?
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem, is they really don't know. That's why they typically ask for all of it. Like,
Yeah.
I want to know how,
How many
how did
children
you
you
hear about
have?
us? Are you
Yeah.
married? How many kids do you have? How old are you? Are you interested in learning more about any of these ministries that we have? Here's all 15 of them. Please check one of them. I mean, because they're like, we just need all this information so that we can make a better decision, instead of saying, really, I just want to know your name and how I can get in touch with you so I can get to know you better.
Yeah, and it's somewhat crazy, because remember, even though it's free to fill out something, there is a cost, and everybody knows that cost. It's that, how many times will they contact me, and will I be able to get out of it later? And if they know too much about me, so like, the more fields we have, the more expensive that form is. So
Yes.
like get whatever it takes to get the easiest form, whether it's going to be texting or whether it's going to be email, just to get something from them, and then you can do a trickle campaign, like where you're, whether you call it a funnel, like you just like start an engagement with them so that they'll give you a little bit more along the way.
So would it be best is if you collect this information, however it is that your church collects this information, would it be best then for you guys to sit back in a room on Monday or Tuesday after Easter, look at all the information and say, okay, how are we going to text them, email, or how are we going to call them? Would a phone call be a good next step or follow up as opposed to a text or an email?
Well, I think you want to have the minimum information and you want to have your plan before you
Yes.
ask people for
Okay.
that information. Because if you're waiting to get started thinking about this until after you've collected that information, it's, people get spring fever,
Yeah.
pastors are exhausted, the youth groups getting ready to wind up for the summer, that, like wind up meaning like they're getting ready to be busy.
Right.
All of this stuff is happening inside the church. And if you don't already have a plan in place, those people are going to fall through the cracks. Maybe
Yeah.
one or two, maybe some of them are going to get the full connection. But if you don't have a consistent follow-up plan already in place before you even gather that information, you're going to lose that connection.
Yeah, and let's call a spade too. On Monday after Easter, everyone is totally exhausted. It is not the time to try to figure out a follow-up plan at that point.
Right. Right. Now, as for what works best, is it a text? Is it an email? Is it a phone call? I think one of the things that we all have to remember is everyone has their own preference for the way they prefer to be communicated with,
Mhm.
um, which is why you can't do just one of those things.
Okay.
You need to do multiple forms of communication, and you don't need to do it all in the first week.
No.
So please don't. Which is why, at Text in Church, we talk about, a follow up process for a guest being around 6 weeks. We have some people that have said that's too long for us. We do 4 weeks, but the majority of people actually do the 6 or even 12 weeks of follow up. And I can talk a little bit about why that is later. But that follow up process being longer enables you to kind of slowly, like Mark was talking about, drip, kind of information, and not just information, but conversation, encouragement, things like that in your communications via email, via text. Yes, somebody should make a phone call, but be prepared to leave a message
Mhm.
because, you know, sometimes the pastor or somebody will say, like, I really like to make a phone call. I like to call all of our guests, but chances are that person is not going to answer that phone if they don't know who's calling them. So you need to be prepared to leave a message that's not
Yep.
bumbling and confusing,
Yep.
that's clear, and do all of those things over the course of several weeks.
Yeah,
Because
and it was interesting because a really good friend of mine just started going to a new church. Finally filled out his Connect card. As he said, I took a deep breath and thought, okay, well, I'll fill it out just so that I'm now known. And that's one thing that we do know is that people don't want to be visitors until they want to be known as a visitor
Mhm.
right,
or guest. And the moment that they do fill out that form, like he wasn't quite sure what it was going to do, but he knew it was going to activate something. Well, Tuesday night, after he filled out his form on Sunday morning, he had a deacon and two people from the youth department show up at his door with an entire meal for his family, but they never let him know before actually showing up at his door.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And so, like, you just people are idiots sometimes. Like, you just have to think through, like, there was nothing positive about that experience with the church. So, as he said, I don't know whether I'd fill out the connect card the next time. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that everyone knows what the next steps are and that we get full permission to do it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I like what you guys said here. Just to highlight a few things real quick is like, Jeanette, I know that whenever somebody calls me and I don't recognize the number, I'm not answering. So I'm putting right to voicemail, and so if you're gonna follow up with a phone call, you have to be good with leaving a message, and that's totally appropriate because I do go back and listen to the messages, or I look at on my iPhone the transcript of the message or
Right.
whatever.
Those are always fun.
But Mark, I think the idea of that church going and giving them food is a great idea. It's just like what you said, executed very poorly because then you just feel trapped there. Like if you're the person and you're not communicating with, hey, maybe I don't need food, or maybe I have food allergies or something like that. You're
Right.
you're you're not getting to know the people. You're thinking you're doing something that you think is going to be good, but you don't actually know if it's going to be beneficial to that person or not.
Absolutely. And Tom, I mean, we probably should just even take a step back further and realize that if someone's visiting you for the very first time on Easter, they're probably not going to give you personal information. So what I would strongly urge every church that's listening, uh, on any service, whether it's a big service like Easter or any other service, make sure that they know the trusted way to find out information about the church. And that should probably be their website. And
Mm.
so, um, I think that we've almost let websites kind of go by the wayside where we don't really talk about them very much, mainly because most people don't really care what domain you have, what URL. They will probably just Google your church, and sure enough, Google will probably serve up the website. If it doesn't, then you have bigger problems than what we could talk about today.
Yeah.
But what needs to happen from the stage and from everything, like from guest services to any interaction that somebody has with a first time guest or even a regular visitor, it needs to be stated that you can trust our website, and that if in doubt, just go to our website, because things have changed. And it used to be that everyone used to refer to the bulletin. It's like, yeah, if you look in your bulletin, you'll be able to see everything that's happening this week. Well, most people have moved past that print material, and we just need to make sure that we have a great way for them to find out the information on their website. And then when they're on the website, that's probably where they'll go, you know what? I would like to get some more information about something, or I would like to download a book, or I'd like to, get a PDF of something. And then that's where you can get some more of their personal information.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We overlook the website, but really, the website really needs to be updated with all the accurate information that's happening. The worst thing to do is that you have a bad phone number or a bad email address or even a bad location or something there from like 2019. It was the last time you updated it. You need to have your website really updated.
Well, plus there needs to be, what Jeanette and I have been talking about, this whole, drip campaign, or what I like to call the relationship journey, is like know where they're possibly at when they arrive, and then know where you want to take them. So if the membership goal is ultimately, you know, we want them to have a great relationship with Jesus Christ and be able to become a Christ follower. Ultimately, you want discipleship, and you want them to become a huge evangelist and go out and tell the world. That's our ultimate goal. Well, it all starts with that single interaction that happens on the campus, and then typically it moves to some type of a digital entity. And so on your website, if you have a theme from, what you all are known for as a church, or what the theme of the Easter presentation, oftentimes when people go to the website after Easter, there's very little left of Easter on their website because it's expired or it's from the previous year. Which, but the thing is that there needs to be that next step clearly told in the service. If you go to our website, you can then do this, and then when you get to the website, that is really clear on the home page, that next step that can help them start moving towards a relationship with Christ.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jeanette, were you going to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with
Yep.
Mark and laughter.
Oh, good. Oh, okay, so let's do this. So, we got about like 10, 15 minutes left here. Let's kind of let's land the plane. I was trying to think of the right phrasing. Let's land the plane here. As we kind of wrap up here, what are some tips and encouragement that you would give that maybe you haven't shared yet?
I'll let you go first, Jeanette.
Well, first of all, if you want to know more about Text in Church, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to share about more about Easter follow up with you. But I think that as far as tips go, I think one thing, that we did mention, but I just want to circle back is you want to have a plan for follow up before Easter Sunday gets here. And there's still time to do it.
Yes.
It doesn't take that long. And you don't, even if I mentioned this, like, Mark and I mentioned this longer, relationship journey, this building, having conversation, this 6 weeks. You don't even have to necessarily know everything you want to say for 6 weeks, but do a general map out of the important connection points that you want to make with someone. And, you know, he, I do agree with Mark where he said, listen, if somebody's showing up for the very first time on Easter Sunday, they may not be ready to give you their information. But if you have something in mind, and Ryan Wakefield from Church Marketing University teaches this idea in some of his trainings, where you're prepared. You have to give them a reason to come back, and it doesn't need to necessarily be the very next Sunday. And he talks about another very popular Sunday is Mother's Day, and so
Yes.
inviting people for that or something like that. But, I spoke with a church in Lakeland, Redemption Church in Lakeland, Florida this week, and their communications. Actually, I don't know his title. He wears many hats like all of us do. But Caleb Oliver from there was talking about they actually have planned out from now until Memorial Day everything that every Sunday and how it's basically inviting people back for each week. There's a relationship building service or event or gathering that people are being invited to, with the idea that it's going to take all the way till Memorial Day to know whether or not, they're going to be tracking and, keeping up with, who comes on Easter and comes back for that second, third, fourth time all the way to Memorial Day. And so I think the idea of planning is so very important. That's an extreme, very well planned out thing, but you can also just say, what are we inviting them back to?
Yes.
And why would they want to come back for next week or the week after? And so I think that's important. And then, like I mentioned before, using multiple forms of communication, being consistent in making sure that everybody is getting that follow up, and also making sure, it's sufficient in the fact that you're doing it for more than just 1 week.
Yep. Well, let me just jump on that. We do a thing every year where after Easter we have a guest speaker share the week after, and we try to get someone with a well-known name
And again, we're a bigger sized church, but we're able to do that. And we sometimes get more people to come back for that guest speaker than we do for Easter. But again, then the thing is, what's next? You always have to be thinking through, what are you inviting them back to, and how do you keep them engaged in, so that hopefully ultimately they're building community and they're coming to know the Lord as their Savior. So yeah, that's a great thought, Jeanette. Mark, what do you got?
So I just feel like the two of you have just dropped the mic, because as as I quickly pivoted and said, Jeanette, why don't you go first? I was thinking, holy crap, what do I say? Uh, and the only thing that came to mind was, start something at Easter. Like
Mm,
Easter is about resurrection. It's about life. It's about a new beginning. People are looking desperately for something new,
yeah.
and just start something. Like, get something started. It's not the end. And the the craziness of our communication world today is that oftentimes people will read something and say, so what? Like,
Yep.
what now? And oftentimes we have these Easter things, and like, we do up from the grave he arose, and like, and then we finish and it's like, oh man, and it's like, you're dismissed. And it's like, it stops something rather than start something. And I think
Mm,
that we need to make sure, and it's really similar to what you guys were saying, is it's like, have a plan. Like, really just have a plan, talk through it. I know that everyone is so incredibly tired going up to Easter. You're all overworked, you're underpaid, you're to a point where it's just like, can we get it all done? Oh my goodness, it's got to be done. And then it happens. And the thing is that it really can't be the end of your planning, it can be the
yeah.
beginning of your planning.
I love what you just said there, Mark. Actually, because one of the things I like to do on Easter is, well, actually, this is what I do with like all my online Bible studies. Is that whenever I end a Bible study, I'm starting a new one, and I'm inviting those people to continue the journey with me. And what you're just saying here is, you're inviting them back to do something, and maybe it is a Bible study. Hey, if you're interested, a great way to follow up is, hey, if you're interested, come to this Bible study, whether it's an in-person one or an online one, and we're going to be talking about this and something that's relevant to the resurrection and the life of Christ that gives us. And so I think those are some great ideas right there.
Yeah, and I think that what you just said is really just, in the marketing communications world. I mean, I think we all understand that we have to look at the average person who's attending, and what are their biggest needs, what are their biggest concerns, what are their biggest goals, and then how do we become a solution to the needs and concerns, or a path to a
Mm,
goal. And then when we communicate what the next thing is, we need to make sure that not only do we say their name as the people that are listening to us, but we need to be able to speak their pain. But then ultimately, I mean, it's solutions to proclaim. I mean, it's just like one of those things where, let me just give you a benefit or a solution or a path to a goal, and then people will go, you know what, I'm going to make time for the next whatever you started at Easter.
yeah, do that. Yeah, I agree with you completely on that. So, well, guys, this has been awesome. This has been great having you guys on and sharing. As we kind of just wrap up, how can people connect with you? What's a great way that they can connect with you, either online or email or whatever's best for you guys?
I'm on Twitter at Jeanette Yates. And of course, you can also follow at Text and Church on Twitter as well. We're also over on Instagram. I'm over there. I don't know which is, well, I think Twitter is, I don't know. They're
You
both
better
great.
say Twitter.
Twitter's my favorite. It's the easy peasy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how you can get in touch with me.
And everyone needs to get in touch with Jeanette
Yeah.
Yates.
Yep.
And Tom Pounder as well. If you don't know, like if you don't follow them on a regular basis, I enjoy their posting and their interactions, and I can't say enough good about them. And if you're looking for me, I'm at most things. I'm Mark Mac 1023. It's my birthday, October 23rd. So Mark
Nice.
Mac 1023. And then the easiest way to just get a hold of me, go to beknownforsomething.com, and you can even set up a totally free discovery call with me. There's lots of opportunities as you look at through our drip on our website.
Do I have to fill out 10 pages worth of information about this to get a free call?
I think I'm going to add to my forms, are you a friend of Tom and Jeanette's?
Yes.
And then if that, they'll get priority.
There
And
you go. That's great.
Tom, I know you're signing off, but I did, speaking of Twitter and how awesome it is, I did tweet at you just now
Yeah.
that a Easter follow-up plan
Oh,
that
nice.
people can download. So it's completely free. So they can, if they want to check that out, it is an option. It talks about a lot of the stuff that we've already talked about here. But I was like, hey, I know where I can find one of these, one
That's
of these
great.
follow-up plans. All right.
Good. I'm going to include all this stuff. So that'd be great. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys taking time to spend with me on this April Fool's Day.
That's right.
Thank you, Tom.
All right,
you, Tom.
guys. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, so what did you think of the interview? What did you think of the ideas that we shared? There's lots of different ideas, lots of different thoughts about following up on Easter. But the great thing is about you can take the principles applied here and apply it into your every Sunday services. You can apply these follow-up principles all throughout the year. So I would love to hear from you. What did you think of this? What encouraged you? What challenged you? What gave you inspiration? Definitely put it in the comment section below or hit me up on Twitter at @TA Pounder. I know Mark and Jeanette are on Twitter as well, and they would love to talk to you as well. I've got all their contact information in the show notes, so you definitely want to check that out today. All right, heroes. Well, thanks so much for being with me today. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, definitely go to iTunes or Spotify. Go to YouTube and subscribe to this. You can find this all at thechurch.digital as well. And at thechurch.digital, we have tons of different podcasts, tons of different resources, tons of coaching and cohorts that are available for you. So we would love for you to go to thechurch.digital today and get encouraged in your digital ministry. All right, heroes, well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week. And until next time, have a great one.